our studio embarked on a series of formal explorations that gave rise to interesting issues related to scale, abstraction, volume, and integration. How could we reimagine existing objects in new forms, and then use those forms of operations to generate space? Through experimental manipulations of our objects, we began to develop a formal language that would guide the evolution of the project.
In the second phase of the project, we were asked to incorporate our new objects into House 14 on Governor's Island. At this point, it became clear that it would be difficult to retain the historic integrity of the site while adhering to the design operations that had led to our Phase 1 objects.
But how could these proposals be realized? What would be the socio-economic and cultural apparatus that could see them actualized?
If we were to imagine this new institution, we'll want to consider what has worked and what hasn't.
Looking at precedents, the first being the institutional satellite model, similar to MoMA PS1, offers the benefit of resources for experimental programming, however runs the risk of conflicting priorities between leadership and creatives.
Similarly, we have the academic satellite model, which is exemplified in A Student in the Woods attached to Tulane University, a major academic institution. It's great because it attracts visiting scholars, but its challenge is that it's short-staffed and needs major marketing and promotion help.
On the other side of the funding spectrum is a grassroots effort. As an example, the community project Color Theory in Chicago highlights the sustainability of community co-ownership in organic cultural growth and participation.
So next we'll introduce two of our studio projects, which ensures the success of these precedents.
Our first idea is to create a satellite space for experimental architecture. The satellite would act similarly to the existing prompt for the semester, where visiting architect will utilize the space and build their own experimental projects that will be available for public viewing throughout the year. This idea is similar to MoMA PS1, which has supported and showcased emerging voices in the architectural community over the last several years. This site could be a new hotspot, off the beaten path for the new generation of architects and enthusiasts to experiments, exhibitions, and social events for artists and architects. Nicole's final project is a good example of a satellite space that could house experimental architecture. The parasite invading House 14 acts as a sculptural component, and this vice can exist in multiple states. Its flexibility creates a space that can be adapted to the needs of the many architects and artists who will reside there in the coming years.
As the structural integration acts as a parasite living on and within the house, artists can come and integrate themselves within the house and landscape to display their work. While the parasite is invading the host and transfiguring the spaces, both interior and exterior, the artist can perform the same function by using parts of the house and landscape to integrate it in their sculpture, so that the site becomes part of their creation. The moving fragment shifts out from under the structural canopy, scarring the land beneath, revealing an underground public space. This act of movement opens up the limits of space and creates a new figure. Scarring and carving the land bridges the gap between ground and architecture, allowing people to interact within the landscape. If the artists integrate the house and land in their sculpture, this further highlights the idea of people interacting with one another as well as the site.
Artists have been priced out of many of the creative spaces in New York. Art that is appreciated by smaller groups are always looking for more audience. In this next project, we will be exploring the possibility of an artist studio where artists' work are not isolated by its form and medium. A place to host artists of different disciplines to come and work and share with the community at large. This space could offer an opportunity for artists to come together in a free, communal, creative space.
We envision a place where ideas, creations, public and private spaces collide. House 14 would be for the artists who leave a mark, leave a name, but can never show their face. Graffiti and street art have always been a part of New York's urban context in the form of underrepresented architectural intervention. When considering ideas of architectural addition versus invasion, graffiti engages existing context without degrading a building's character. The unfortunate stigma behind this form of intervention is that the people who create it are punished for their forms of expression. Those artists are the ones who make New York unique. At House 14, street artists would have a place to safely create, collaborate, and display their work. To further iterate the concept of empowering local agency, the public would be given license to alter the site's not-so-public spaces.
Our two project ideas will require a careful and robust model for financial viability and longevity, the first of which is seed funding for materials, construction, programming, and staff. Hopefully that comes from an institution like Pratt. And we need crowdsourced funding and possible equity for participating artists in the space.
Additionally, passive income streams such as charging for outside events may also be something to think about during the empty months on Governor's Island.
Ultimately, if we want to imagine the possibility of creating an experimental space for art and architecture, we need to do it right, and we're asking you for your help. Thank you so much for your consideration.